A cold winter wind sliced through the busy streets of Manhattan, biting through the layers of clothing of every passer-by. People pulled their coats tighter, their hands retreating into pockets, trying to escape the numbing cold. Among them stood Donald Trump, wrapped in a dark overcoat, standing firmly amidst his security detail. His sharp eyes scanned the streets, his gaze intense, as if searching for something he couldn't quite put into words. Today, instead of staying cozy inside his usual motorcade, Trump had decided to walk the city, driven by a sudden, inexplicable urge to immerse himself in its raw, unscripted rhythm. As he turned into a narrow alleyway, his steps slowed, his gaze landing on a man slumped against a cold stone wall. The man wore a tattered military jacket, the once proud green fabric now faded to a worn shade of gray, worn thin by time and weather. At his feet lay a cardboard sign, hastily scribbled with the words, "Veteran in need of help." Trump's brow furrowed slightly as he noticed the man. His gloved hand instinctively clenched. Without a word, he signaled for his security team to stand back, and with slow, deliberate steps, he approached the man. The crunch of Trump's shoes on the salt-covered pavement echoed through the stillness of the alley. The man, hearing the approaching footsteps, looked up. His sunken eyes, tired but full of quiet defiance, met Trump's gaze. He straightened slightly, refusing to show any weakness. "Who are you?" the man rasped, his voice rough and gravelly. Trump didn't answer right away. Instead, he crouched down to the man's level, extending his hand in a calm, deliberate gesture. "What's your name?" Trump asked, his voice steady, a bridge between two worlds that seemed impossibly far apart. The man hesitated for a moment, his gaze flickering between Trump's outstretched hand and his eyes, as if questioning the sincerity of this strange encounter. Finally, he took the hand, his grip slow but firm, and pushed himself to his feet. "Jack Miller," he said, his voice rough but resolute. "Former Marine." Trump repeated the name as if to etch it into his memory. "Jack, you look like you've been through a lot." Jack let out a dry laugh, the sound barely audible in the wind. "More than I care to remember, sir. But everyone has their cross to bear." Trump stayed silent for a moment, his eyes moving to the faint medals pinned to Jack's jacket. "You're a veteran," he said, his tone heavy with both recognition and respect. Jack nodded, a flicker of pride crossing his face, though he seemed to suppress it. "Afghanistan, a few tours. We did things I'll never make peace with, but we did them for our country." The wind howled through the alley, mixing with the distant sounds of honking cars and the usual hum of the city. Trump stood motionless, the words hanging heavy in the air between them. Finally, he spoke again, his voice low but pressing. "Why are you here, Jack?" Jack lowered his head, his gloved hands clenching. "I lost my way after I came back. Jobs were hard to hold on to. My health started to fail, and the system isn't what they tell you. Not until you're the one on the outside." Trump nodded slowly, his gaze steady, as if piercing through the invisible barrier that separated them. "What unit were you in?" "Bravo Company, 3rd Battalion," Jack replied, his voice still strained. "We were in Kandahar back in the early days." Trump froze for a moment, his eyes widening slightly. "Bravo Company. You were the ones who did the impossible. They called you the Ghost Team." Jack straightened, a brief, flickering moment of pride crossing his face, before the weight of reality brought it crashing down. "Yeah, we were good," he muttered, "but it all disappeared when we came back." The two men stood there for a long moment, the biting wind swirling around them, carrying with it the city's distant noise. But in this moment, all seemed quiet. Trump looked at Jack for what seemed like an eternity, before finally speaking, his voice firm and resolute. "Come with me, Jack. You don't belong here." Jack looked up at Trump, disbelief flickering in his eyes. But when he met Trump's gaze, something genuine, something unspoken, passed between them. There was no ulterior motive, no strings attached. For a brief moment, Jack's pride made him hesitate, but in the end, he nodded. A few days later, Jack found himself settled in a hotel nearby, arranged by Trump for his privacy. One morning, as pale sunlight filtered through the heavy curtains, Trump sat across from him in a secluded corner. "I want to do something for you, Jack," Trump began, his voice measured and serious. "Not just a room or a few meals. I want people to know about Bravo Company, about what you and your team did. People need to understand your sacrifice." Jack lowered his head, his hands gripping his coffee cup tightly. The steam rose to his face, but it couldn't melt the weight in his eyes. "I don't know, sir. Most of those memories, they should stay where they belong. People don't want to hear about what we did." Trump remained silent for a moment, his gaze unwavering. Finally, he spoke again, his tone firm but calm. "Not just for them, Jack. For you. You stepped into danger, so the rest of us could live in peace. That kind of courage deserves to be recognized." Jack looked up at him then, his unfocused eyes gradually sharpening. He studied Trump's face as if searching for the truth behind his words. A long moment passed between them, the air thick with unspoken understanding. Jack exhaled deeply and nodded. In the days that followed, Trump's team worked quietly behind the scenes to organize an event, a ceremony to honor Jack and Bravo Company. Private calls were made, reaching out to Jack's former comrades. Some were surprised, others deeply moved, but all agreed to attend. On the day of the ceremony, Jack was escorted to the White House. As he walked through the grounds, his steps faltered, his eyes taking in the scene before him as if he couldn't believe it was real. The simple suit he wore hugged his lean frame, his hesitation evident in every movement. Trump stood at the entrance, his expression softening when he saw Jack arrive. Without a word, he gave a brief nod, silent but full of respect, urging Jack to breathe deeply and steady himself. Inside, the atmosphere was somber and dignified. Rows of chairs were neatly arranged, and the glow from the grand chandeliers cast a warm but stately light over the room. As Jack entered, the room shifted. His former comrades stood to their feet, saluting him in unison. Some had tears in their eyes, while others maintained a firm, stoic demeanor, but all of them radiated deep respect. Trump stepped to the podium, gripping it firmly as if drawing strength from it. His voice echoed throughout the room, calm but filled with gravity. "Today, we honor an extraordinary individual, Jack Miller, and the entire Bravo Company. They did the unimaginable to protect us. Their sacrifices deserve recognition, not only for the battles they faced, but for the resilience they showed when confronting the wounds no one can see." The room fell silent, each word from Trump cutting through the stillness. Heroes come in many forms, but those who not only fight on the battlefield, but also weather the storms within their souls are the ones who truly deserve to be called heroes. Trump gestured to Jack, inviting him to step forward. Jack rose slowly, his steps heavier than usual, as he made his way to the center of the room. The applause was thunderous, the sound echoing through the space, each clap vibrating with respect. Jack stood there, overwhelmed, but his gaze remained firm and unwavering. He was no longer just a veteran. In that moment, he had become a symbol of courage and resilience. Trump carefully opened a velvet box and revealed a gleaming medal. Small in size but immense in meaning, he draped it around Jack's neck, his hands steady and respectful. "Jack, For your service, your bravery, and your sacrifice, we honor you. You are a hero, not just to me, but to everyone here." Jack's eyes filled with tears as he stood tall. This was the moment he had been waiting for. A moment where he would finally be seen, acknowledged, and appreciated for all he had endured.